Jasleen, would you like to tell us something about the various craft institutions that have come up in the country since 47 and how they've contributed to the renewal of crafts, to the study of crafts?
Well, there are a number of institutions which have come up. And before 1947, the Congress Party always at their meetings used to have an exhibition of the handicrafts and folk performances and so on. And Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay was very much involved with that. And so was Gandhiji, very, very much involved in encouraging this to happen.
Okay. We also had Shantiniketan.
And then there was Shantiniketan, which was much earlier, started by Rabindranath Tagore, and where they had the Kalabhavan, which was really the classical, and then they initiated work on the handicrafts as such and cottage industries, and they set up another school. I have a bee in my bonnet about these separation of the arts and the classical arts or the higher, like painting and sculpture and folk art. I feel that it's very important that we should see the holistic approach of the living cultural traditions. And Kamala Devi ji was very much part of that whole thing, because when she was chairperson to begin with of handicrafts and handloom, she was also vice president of the Sangeet Natak Academy.
Okay. So
and she was responsible for the development of the living cultural traditions and of performing arts. And the performing arts and performers who were people who were discriminated against suddenly have come up. They are the aristocrats of the world today, of our world today. But we were not so successful in the building up of the status of the master craftsman as such. Now, there were institutions which came up. Of course, we talked about the All India Handicrafts Board, the Handloom Board, Silk Board, but as Khadi village industries, choir, and so on. The two institutes which gave a tremendous fillip was the Central Cottage Industries Association, which we talked about. And they used to say that tourists who came to India, they went either first to Agra to see the Taj, and the second visit was to the Cottage Industries Emporium, because the Cottage Industries Emporium was monumental and people saw the crafts from all over.
But unfortunately, that's not the case today.
That's not the case today, unfortunately. It's gone down terribly. But what has happened is private institutions have come up and they are doing so well. Now, there were also other institutions which were there, like the Salarjung Museum, which had a fabulous collection of arts and crafts, the Madras Museum, and which also had similar collection, and there were these regional museums which were in Kerala, in and so on. And then there was the Calico Textile Museum, which was showed the best and was one of the finest textile museum in the world. And people came just to see
the textiles.
The textiles.
What about the Crafts Museum?
And then came up the Crafts Museum, which in the beginning was, very popular, came up. Then Shankhu Chowdhury built up, traditional architecture. One of the institutions which has contributed greatly has been the Sanskriti, the Anandagram, which is the initiative of O.P. Jain.
Where we are standing.
Where we are standing. And in a way, it's a symbol, the bud, the tree which multiplies itself has always been a symbol associated with culture and art and its evolution. And Mr. O.P. Jain has, with the help of experts and his own initiative, made a tremendous collection, and there are three museums. The first thing he started was the everyday art.
Okay.
And then the Indian terracottas. We had workshops here. He had masters whom he invited, and they made these large horses, and also the collection of terracotta, which you see, which is made, which teaches you the history of terracotta as such.
Okay.
So let's walk towards that now.
Do you want to tell us a little bit how O.P. Jain started this and which
Well,
year
O.P.
he
Jain
started this?
started, I don't remember what year, but started the everyday art collection and kept it in the basement of his own house.
Okay.
And it was started many years ago. Slowly he built up this place and he added to that. So the Indian terracottas formed one aspect of it, and then the everyday art collection, which he already had, was housed in another hall. And then later on, the latest is a research collection of Indian textiles. It's also always better to see the objects and talk about it than to just talk. This is the Terracotta Museum, and you see here the beginning of, if you go inside, you see the beginning of pottery, how it began.
Okay.
And textiles and pottery are the earliest, and our potters had a very important part in the history of the creativity, because the traditional name for a pot is patram. It is made from leaves, patra. And that name, patram, gave the name patra, which was used for the human body, that which contains the human spirit.
Yeah.
It also became, it was used for patram is the actor, because he absorbed the spirit of the person that he enacted.
Yes.
So you see, it has very deep links and connotations with our way of life. And we can move further. You can see the different types of, look at that wonderful bull. He is the Vahana of Shiva.
Okay.
And so when he is created, and his presence shows the presence of Shiva. And then there are all those wonderful horses. These are the guardians. In the Pudukkottai district in Tamil Nadu, they used to make these figures as nightly shrines. All night they are supposed to ride and protect the villagers. So we should now perhaps move to the textile gallery, and we can show you. But in the meantime, have a look at this goddess seated on the lion, the two symbols of power, of Shakti, created newly. And O.P. Jain runs workshops, provides space for artists to come and work. He has studios over here, and he also himself conducts workshops as such. And
so a lot of what is here is pieces that have been collected, or pieces that
some have been
commissioned?
collected and specially commissioned and made right here as such. And workshops with children, telling them and showing them, and you see and they are contributing and coming to know
about their crafts,
their own background, their tradition, and becoming aware and enriched by this whole experience.
We're now in the textile gallery of Sanskriti, and you yourself also have a big love for textiles. Would you like to start by telling us about some of the textiles that we see around here?
Textiles are my life. I look at textiles as as that which tells the story of the universe. And I love surrounding myself with beautiful textiles. I love wearing textiles which are handmade. I never wear machine-made material. Because I feel that in the textiles, the early beginnings of creativity of the human race can be seen. People think that pottery started first, but I think it's textiles, because pottery started by stitching together of leaves, and the stitching together of the leaves created the pot, the patram, as it is that which contains. And it's also part of weaving process. You are
interlacing.
You see, the architecture began with textiles, because they wove the branches together to create the roof, to create the wattle sides, which even till today are being used. And then from that, weaving started, and then they made amongst the tribal people, the tents. In Iran, for instance, they call this the tent chador, that which covers the person. And chador is the veil that the women wear. So you can imagine that textiles cover us, provide us with shelter, provide us with color.
And the protection.
And the protection not only in the form of covering, but the symbols which are woven protect us.
Yes.
You know, and therefore the textiles are. And I thought we would begin our journey in Sanskriti's research collection with the textiles, which is my love.
Okay.
My life.
Want to start off by telling us a little bit about what you're wearing?
Oh yeah, thank you for asking me. This is one of my favorite textiles. It's called Ilkali.
Okay.
And it comes from Karnataka and is a traditional dress of the people of the Deccan.
Okay.
And it has a border with a matte finish, as it is called over here, and that border is called chatai, which is the mat. And most of the Ilkali saris have this border. The traditional Ilkali sari will be of cotton with a mixed silk pallu, mixed silk border, and the pallu, which is here, which is has this red and white, typical of the Ilkali and the Andhra Karnataka saris. And this has red with the white which is woven in, and it's called top and teni. Teni is a bud. It's not what we find in other places that it symbolizes the temple. It could symbolize the temple, but here it's called top and teni. Top is this straight patta, and teni is the jasmine bud. So you are woven a patta, which is a support, and the jasmine, which makes our lives fragrant.
And these would be natural dyes?
And the warp has always been, and the wedding sari has always been this blue-black.
Okay.
And the warp has always been indigo. Always. And the weft could be indigo, dark indigo, or it could be black, which would be the black of also a vegetable dye. I had mentioned about the importance of the check. So this is a powerful sari because it has a checked pattern in it, and the checked pattern with the two lines running parallel to the earth, two lines moving upwards to the sky creates a checkered or a chalk pattern. Central square is the part of the mandala, which is where the bindu is, which is the powerful center. Now, if you notice that there are 9 squares, and these 9 squares represent the nakshatras. And a repeat of this means that we are in the control of the nakshatras which govern our life.
Okay.
And the other interesting thing, which very few people realize, is the game that we have played as children, knots and crosses, is this game where you put a circle and a cross. The circle is the sun and the cross is the night.
Okay.
And therefore, that is, we are playing not a children's game. We are playing a cosmic game. And this sacred grid gives power to the sari and blesses the marriage and the woman and her partner.
Okay.
So you see what I mean, why I love textiles is that one piece of cloth tells you so much about the history, the environment, the mythical meanings and so on, which are embodied in a piece of textile. Now here we are in this beautiful room which has extraordinarily beautiful textiles which are embroidered behind us. Now here, this is the bag, it's not a pulkari. Pulkari is which is dispersed and therefore it's less valuable. Now this one is woven, is embroidered from the wrong side and the entire surface is covered with silk. So it looks like a silk brocade. Now this particular one is called Varidabak, which is that which is created by the paternal grandmother to be given to the bride. And when she covers the bride as she comes into the house, it means she is now part of the family, because a family history is given in this very beautiful. And if you notice that there are little black spots, the black spots are that nobody should cast the evil eye on the embroidery. And you can see that there are, it's in 4 pieces. Why? Because they could only weave that width. They couldn't weave, and so they had to embroider it and then attach it. And you then get, variations. And also the belief was only God can create perfection. The human being tries to create, but will not succeed. Now, behind me, as you can see, are these extraordinary kanthas which come from Bengal. And they too have a meaning and significance in the lives of the people. They are made from worn out saris. What happens is that, now we all talk about recycling as a new discovery that we have made. Recycling was done in our country from times immemorial. Textiles were very precious. When they were completely worn out, and in Bengal they wore white saris with beautiful rich borders. The main sari would be very, very fine cotton. The borders would be twisted, colorful cotton threads. So they would keep the saris, and when they had 3-4 saris, they would put one on top of the other and stitch it together, and then make patterns on them. And they would make patterns of which are taken from their life, from mythology. And these saris, old saris, they would cut out the border, draw the threads from the border, and use those threads, colorful threads, to do the embroidery. Now, there was a custom also to go and ask somebody who had lived a very long life, somebody who had lived a very rich life, intellectually, spiritually, for a piece of their dhoti, because that would be added to the inside, and the aura of the personality of the person would be absorbed in the kantha. And that was done specially for the kantha, which was used as a wrapper for newborn babies. You know, we never made clothes for newborn babies. We didn't believe, we thought it was tempting fate by making clothes beforehand. So they would make little kanthas like that as wrappers, and they would wrap the child in the kantha. Now if you look behind you, look at the kantha below. It has the circle which represents the lotus. The lotus represents the sun on earth. The lotus also represents the opening of the consciousness. The lotus also represents the seat of the gods. The goddess Lakshmi sits on the lotus, and it also represents Buddha. You see, and so that's the powerful mandala in the center. On the corners is the tree of life motif. There's a lot of discussion as to where it came from, and we also in Bengal we call it the kalga. Now it also indicates who are the people who have embroidered this. If you see the borders, 1, 2, 3 borders which are running, they look like woven patterns of a border. So maybe this was embroidered by a weaver's community, by the grandmother for her grandchild, and she copied the borders, or maybe a skillful embroiderer copied the designs from the border. All these colors are from the twisted thick cotton which they pulled out
from the sari.
Then the elephant, the man riding on the elephant, it meant that they are wishing for wealth. Because only a wealthy person would be able to, and then it's also the horses, which is chivalry and chivalrous people. And then you have over there a beautiful peacock, which is eating from a flower, and the peacock is joy. The peacock is also the sunbird. And then the other bird, which is not a peacock but is sacred to the Bengalis, it's the bijoy, the eternal, as you see over there. See, fish up above is fertility. Then the tree of life again, which you see emerges in this, and you see the peacocks on top of the tree over this side, eating from the fruit of plenty, and that is the Kalpa Vriksha, the tree of plenty. See, one piece
tells you so much.
Tells you so much about Bengal. Now, the traditions of embroidery are maintained by the women, and they are their soul is represented in the way in their embroideries, and the richness of their beliefs, of their way of life, you can see in the women's work. This is a special technique of Kashmir. Lots of people call it jamewar, but jamewar is different. It is yardage of the kani weave which was woven for making into jamas. These are the shawls which are woven, and they, as you can see, are in a way very similar. Not totally similar, but very similar. And Akbar started weaving the doshala, the two shawls, because then they would put the two shawls together, and he would wear it so that there would be no wrong side. And so the word of identical shawls being woven together, even if they were not totally identical, were called jamewar. Now this particular piece was made for export to France, and they were sold, they say, their worth in gold, weight in gold, and became very popular. And there was a great demand, and people from all over the world came. They wove for different markets, different products. This was for the European market. Then they wove khataras, the striped patterns, which were used in Turkey and in Iran to line things, to give the edging, and also they wove shawls to be worn as kamarbands and patkas, and they even traveled to Poland, and they wove square shawls which went to the steps. The Turkmenis used to wear it, which were later copied in Europe. So there was a tremendous demand, and people came from all over the world. And cashmere is something which was very, very special, and it died out, and we only had one village and a couple of weavers, and they wove the kanihama shawl, and but it was not of this quality. But fortunately, it has again been revived through the initiative of Kashmir Loom, which was started by Jenny Housego, an English lady who came to work in India, who loves the textiles and has contributed greatly, and her partner Asif. And I'm very glad that Monisha, you are wearing that shawl, Kani shawl, which has similar qualities, not as fine as the one which we are seeing, but as beautiful as ever.